Hello, it's John here from UniTasterDays, and this is one of our events where we explore studying different subjects at university. I am delighted to be joined today by Barnie Choudhury, joining us from the University of East Anglia. Today, we're going to look at what it's like to study journalism, but it's going to be a different format today. Rather than go to PowerPoint, etc., we're going to do it as an interview. So with that, very conscious you've tuned in to hear from Barnie, not for myself. I'll go straight to our first question, Barnie, and that's if you can just tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you've done prior to joining the University of East Anglia.
Oh gosh, I started when I was 16. I joined hospital radio, and then a year later, I was introduced to somebody called Jim Lee, who's now a continuity presenter on Radio 4. And he took me under his wing, and he worked for a station called Mercia Sound in Coventry. I went and made tea and coffee, got as much work experience as I possibly could. Jim wrote a letter to Southern Sound Radio in Portslade in Brighton, where I was going to university. I did some work experience there throughout my 3 years, worked with some fabulous people, household names such as Jonathan Pierce, who does the commentary. And there are lovely stories I could tell you about Jonathan, but they were all so kind to me. And then at 21, I applied to join the BBC as a trainee and was successful enough to get into that. And 24 years later, I left the BBC, set up my own global consultancy. I'd already joined academia in 1999. I was at Nottingham Trent University. Then I went to the University of Lincoln. After that, I went into senior leadership at various places, including the Commonwealth. And that was an experience and a half. And then in 2019, when I'd had enough of being a senior leader, I wanted to go back into journalism, and I'm really fortunate enough to have been snapped up by the Asia Media Group, which runs Eastern Eye newspapers. I'm now the editor at large at Eastern Eye, and I'm also very, very fortunate enough to be working with some fantastic colleagues at the University of East Anglia. I've got to say, the team are just fantastic. They really are. And I feel like a fraud every day, thinking, why on earth did they choose me to come work with them?
That's fantastic. Wow, what an experience. Well, brilliant. A nice question to follow that up then is linking to student. Like, you've done fantastic things in your career and doing fantastic things now. Why would you say students should at least consider studying journalism at university?
The first thing I would say, I twisted the question a bit around a little bit, and I would say, why do you want to be a journalist? That's the most important part. What is it about you that wants to be that person who is the voice for others? And what do I mean by that? Journalists have an insatiable curiosity. We don't believe that curiosity killed the cat. We actually believe it got the cream, because we get to ask questions of others, people in power, that we can only dream of. Throughout my career, I've interviewed heads of state, I've interviewed celebrities, pop stars, models, you name it, I've interviewed them, and I get to meet them, and I get to go to events, which honestly is writing the first draft of history. So you've got to have that idea that this is your calling. This is something you've always wanted to do. And that's the first starting point for me. You show me that you are really dedicated to journalism. And then after that, everything falls into place. Why should they study journalism? They will be taught things which they never considered. How to get a story, how to find a story, how to write a story, how to get people on your side, how to be that champion of others who need your help. And essentially, our job, I always think, is twofold. First of all, we hold a mirror up to society and we reflect it. The second thing is that we pick up a rock and see what crawls from underneath it. And the third thing is that we hold power to account. And there is no greater privilege than that, I don't think.
That's a fantastic, wow, you sold it to me. So linking on to that then, so say a student is picking subjects they want to do at university, they're watching this, and and actually you've explained why they might want to consider journalism, and now they're thinking, you know what, that sounds incredible to me. If they do decide to study it, can you just give us an idea of what they should expect? You mentioned about interviewing high-profile celebrities and state leaders, etc. That's obviously linked to the career. In terms of actually the course and what they should expect on it, can you just give us a grasp of what a student might do if they study it?
We'll take them step by step through the processes of what makes a story, how to find a story, what a journalist does, how to write, how to tell stories, how to get the best out of people when it comes to interviewing them, how to make contacts, and if they want to go into broadcast journalism, the tools that are associated with it. So if you're going to do radio, for example, microphones and recording devices. If you're going to do television and film, the camera. There's now something, and I don't know whether you can see this or not, you can't, but I'm holding up a smartphone. And that smartphone allows you to do things that I couldn't have done 40 years ago when I started. It is everything on there. You capture film, you capture people, you capture events, and we will show you how to use that and turn it into award-winning journalism, award-winning storytelling. It's called mobile journalism. So those are just some of the elements. Oh, and the other thing that we'll be teaching you is what you can say, what you can't say, and why you can't say it and why you can say it. It's called law and regulations. We'll get you to talk about politics. At this very moment, as we're talking, the biggest political story to hit Britain is Partygate. And that's where the Prime Minister is being held to account over whether he lied to Parliament over a series of parties that were held in Downing Street. Why is that important? It's because we're a democracy and we are not dictated to. We have the right as a society to ask questions of those who are in power. If he lied to Parliament, what else did he lie about is what the journalism and journalists consider. So it's about taking current events. It's about looking at history. It's about matching the two up. And it's about asking questions and arriving at a solution that you think is the story, which you think is the truth. And it's about holding truth to power. That's what we will be teaching you. And it'll be fun. We want it to be fun. Because one of the things that I say to my students is that you're not doing brain surgery. You're writing stories. But these stories have consequences. And you've got to make sure that you're ethical, that you're honest, you're truthful, that you're accurate. Otherwise, you'll put yourself into disrepute. You could get into trouble legally, and you could get the organization into trouble as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. So linked to that, and so in terms of our audience for these events, the two big people that will be watching this is students watching it directly, thinking about university. So maybe 16, 17-year-olds thinking about going to university, or even mature students thinking about going to university later in life, or those within their school groups. A lot of teachers use these events with students to basically give those students an idea of studying different subjects at university. So say, for example, a student is watching this to find out more about journalism. So they've heard from you about your own career. They've heard about why they might want to consider it. Linked to that, they've heard about what to expect, and they think this sounds fantastic. Say they want to move to application stage. Is there anything that, when you're, I don't know how involved you are with applications, but you obviously see loads of students on the course. Is there anything you particularly love to see in a student on the course, and any link to that, any application tips for a student that's considering it?
Show me, don't tell me. Show me your passion. Demonstrate it. Tell me that you've been in charge of your student radio station in your school, that you set it up, that you joined hospital radio, that you took acting classes and you performed on stage, that you used that experience to turn it into a film, and that you know about the grammar of editing a film, for example. Show me that you speak to people, you interact with people. Show me that you've done everything that you possibly could to have found out about journalism. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a person that has potential. You're not the finished product. There's no way you're the finished product. But with the age of social media, with the age of influencers, with the age of smartphones, with the age of Instagram, what have you done that we could now fashion you and help you to maximize your potential, to hold people and power to account and to tell stories? I'm looking for something that shows your curiosity, that shows that you have thought long and hard about it, and this is not a whim. I want stories from you. I want you to tell me that, as happened to me, Cliff Richard came to your school and you were one of the people who asked a question of Cliff Richard. I want you to tell me that you ran a campaign, a journalism campaign, to get safer schools, safer crossings outside your school. I want you to tell me that you had a friend who needed a heart transplant, and you did that story, and you were able to get me that, get that heart transplant, and that this is the cause of it. I want you to show me rather than just say this, the theoretical stuff. That I'm looking for potential. I really am. I'm looking for students who are from diverse backgrounds. I'm looking for students who can bring something to me and make me say, wow. And underlying all that, answer the question, which is deep in my mind, which is, so what? What's special about you? What, there are thousands of people. What is it? What is your unique selling point? And I'm looking for people who have huge tenacity. They're a dog with a bone. They won't let things go. That they're willing to challenge authority. I know that sounds an oxymoron, but if you cannot challenge authority in a respectful way, if you cannot dig for answers, then this is not the profession for you. But if you enjoy stories, if you enjoy learning, if you enjoy history, if you enjoy politics, if you enjoy different aspects, science, if you enjoy doing things that are going to take you to potentially far-flung places, put yourself in harm's way, then you're going to enjoy this career. You really are. I've ticked all of the above, and I cannot tell you how much I pinch myself every day to sort of think that this 16-year-old immigrant, this guy who comes from a broken home, who had very little going for him, managed to join the best news organization in the world, travel around the world, and meet people who influenced him, who inspired him. And he can tell when his daughter has a grandchild or grandchildren, his grandchildren about. It's a fantastic life. It really is.
What a fantastic answer. That's super inspirational. So yeah, thank you very much for that. So linked to that, you kind of touched on careers in the answer then, and also, right at the start, you were kind enough to tell us about your own career and all the opportunities you've enjoyed. If you look at a student that's perhaps considering studying journalism at university and thinking, I want to study it, and I've heard what you've gone on to do, and can you just give us an idea if you're a journalism graduate, what opportunities might be out there, and both perhaps with your University of East Anglia hat on in terms of working with students now, but also the work, the private work you've done separately and working with graduates as well. Can you just a grasp on potential careers would be really, really useful.
The transferable skills are enormous. I mean, the most obvious one is you work in a newsroom and you spend the rest of your days in a newsroom and you progress up the career ladder in that newsroom. And being a reporter is different from being a producer, which is different from being an editor, which is different from being a senior executive. So there is a potential career path that they can do. But hang on a moment, we are really resilient, which means that we're pretty good at helping others. So if you want to go into a charity role or an advisory role, you can do that. We're pretty tenacious, which means that we're great campaigners. So that it means that we get things done. We have to know how to plan properly, which means that we're pretty good at being organizers. We're pretty good at teamwork, because without a team, you're nothing. And therefore, you can be part of a team doing anything, absolutely anything that you want, or you could lead that team. We have to be able to write. We have to be able to tell stories. So we can do marketing. We can do public relations. We can do communications. We have the skill to make films, which means that we don't have to tell real stories. We can do fictional stories. We have to be able to storyboard, and therefore we can go into film production. We can become special advisors for politicians, because we already know what it is that the press are looking for. So we can do a whole host of things because of all the skills that we have to learn. We plan ahead, we scenario plan, we engage with others. And so whatever you want to do, it's possible that a journalist could do that. I know of journalists who become police officers. I know of journalists who join the armed forces. I know journalists who become MPs. I know journalists who become peers. I know journalists who become chief executives. Or you can go into academia. You can do the theoretical side of it as well, if it interests you. I know journalists who are fantastic historians. So there is so much you can do if you have that grounding in journalism. But here's the big question. What is it that you want to do? If you know what success looks like, work backwards. What are the stepping stones to get you there? So at 16, what I wanted to do at 16 and what I now at 57 I'm doing, wow, it's not a straight line. It's all over the place. You know, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, and I've gained experience. And that's the other thing about journalism. You gain and you live for those experiences, and you choose what you want to do. This is no longer an age where you're going to be staying in the same job for the rest of your life. The economy won't allow you to do that. The skills gap and the technology won't allow you to do that. So as you do your journalism course, make 2 columns. What am I learning? How am I using them? And then make a 3rd column. What else can I do? So that's the way that I would approach it if I were wanting to do journalism and thinking, you know what, maybe I don't want to be a journalist. What other skills can I do? What other things can I do?
Thank you, Barney. And actually your answer then made me think of something that a careers advisor said to me a long time ago when I was looking at university courses, and you kind of touched on the similar subject that rather than thinking about a 16-year-old and thinking about what you're going to be doing in 10 years time, actually turn it on its head and then think about a 26-year-old and what you want to be doing at the age of 26 and think what you can do at 16 to get to 26. It's such a fantastic answer, such brilliant advice.
You're going to have a family, aren't you? So you're going to have to think about that. You may have a disability, which ends your career early. But remember now, you can work from home. Remember now that people are looking for flexibility. Remember now that whatever you want to do, only you're stopping yourself from doing it. So, for me, think of a house. You need strong foundations. And then you build it. And you build up and you build up and build up. And the final thing is the roof. And on top of that roof, that pinnacle, when you climb on top of the roof, what can you see? How strong is your house? And how long will that house last? That's your legacy. That's what you really want to think about, I think. I could be wrong. But
no, it's fantastic. Fantastic answer. I really appreciate this and your time. And I just wanted to, if you don't mind, just one final question. I read a report, I believe it's from the National Council of Training for Journalists that said that basically looked at diversity in journalism, and the report said something along the lines of, and hopefully I'm not too far wrong with this, that 92% of people employed in journalism came from white ethnic groups. Do you have any thoughts, just while I'm chatting to you, about what can be done to encourage more diversity in journalism?
I think diversity is a really big thing for me. I was on a panel earlier on this week talking about that very subject. And creative diversity for me is the most important bit. I want people who are creative from different backgrounds, different social classes. So, especially the working classes, because they are so underrepresented. And it doesn't matter whether you're race there. If you're a working class person, your opportunities are fairly limited because you don't have the network. So it's really important that we get more working class people into the industry. Then there's obviously the gender balance. We don't have enough women in journalism, especially at the higher echelons. If this country and the world is 51% women and 49% men, why is it that 70% of leaders are men? Then there's disability. There's invisible disability and there's visible disability. And we've got to be attuned to that, because I cannot walk in the shoes, and that's a poor metaphor to use. I cannot know what the lived experience is of somebody who has a debilitating physical disability. I can with the mental side of it, but not with the physical side of it. And then there's the age aspect of it. It doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are. You've got to reflect that. Got to talk about religion, because different religious groups have different experiences. And then the final thing for me is the racial identity of it. What we need to be saying to people is that you're welcome. We want your experiences, because it brings out for a richer experience for us. If a newsroom is not diverse and has those experiences, it misses stories, it alienates communities. And as a result of that, what we need to do is to start at school and say that journalism is a career for everybody, not just for those whose parents can afford to send their kids to work experience. That's the first thing. It has to go to university, and we have to make a greater effort to engage with those hard to reach communities. And we need to, if there are benefactors out there, I want people to do scholarships so that we widen participation that way. And then the industry has to really look at itself to see, why is it that we're not diverse? I've just written the third and final part of an essay. It's a series of essays for my newspaper, Eastern Eye. The first two were about my experiences in the BBC, and the third is the solutions aspect of it. And I think it's quite easy. We mentor, we develop, we do all those things. But we also need to champion. And that's the third missing element for me in that triumvirate corner. We don't champion journalism. We don't champion people. We don't champion widening participation as much as we should do in a pragmatic and practical way at every single level. And we've got to approach this without defensiveness. But we've also got to stop doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results, because Einstein didn't say it. He's credited for saying it, because that's the definition of madness. If we do the same things over and over again, and expect different results, completely and utterly bonkers. So to round off that answer, we need to take that responsibility. Each of us needs to take that responsibility and bring people into this wonderful, wonderful profession. And it is. I could not imagine doing anything else. I've just been so humbled and honoured by my professional career. It has been an adventure, and it's been a great adventure. It really has.
Thank you very much, Barney. What, again, a brilliant answer. And actually, one thing, as a closing message to that, I think you mentioned that journalism is a career opportunity for everybody. I think it's such a well put. That's lovely. Really, really nice way to finish. So all that's left for me to say is a big thank you to Barney Choudhury for this journalism introduction today. Really appreciate your time. I'll come to you to finish, Barney, just to say if you've got any closing remarks, but I really appreciate your time and thank you. And anyone watching, I'm sure they'll be super grateful, because it's I've learned a lot, so I'm sure they have as well.
come and join the party. It's a great one.